Welcome to the Spirit-Filled Leadership Podcast. I'm Pete Burek. This is a podcast where we believe that the world needs disciples and disciples need Spirit-Filled leaders. So every episode we take time, just a little bit of time, to invest in you as a leader to help you grow in your awareness of and cooperation with the Spirit of God that lives in your heart through your baptism and confirmation, as well as give you practical tips and tools to grow in your leadership. So today's topic is humility. And humility is an interesting virtue to explore in the realm of leadership because it's one that even the world would celebrate, even though the world doesn't always understand humility. And so right out of the gate, I want to help define what we mean by humility. Humility is not thinking you're bad at everything. Humility is not kind of denigrating yourself in order to appear humble or appear pious or appear meek. Humility is understanding your identity, living fully in your identity, and understanding and believing the source of your identity and gifting. It's an expression of justice to be able to properly give what is due to the source of our power, to the source of our gifting, to the source of our very lives. So the Christian understanding of humility is to be able to kind of, in all transparency, in full authenticity, in fullness of truth, to be able to say, you are God, and I am not. And everything I have is a gift. Every moment of my life, every skill is a gift. And every weakness I can transform into a strength in your power. Every brokenness you can do something about it. You know, it's the old adage that humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking less about yourself, right? So just be spending less time focused down here on who I am and kind of how do I make sense of all this, and more of humility is a posture of gazing at God and allowing Him to reveal to us who we really are and what we're made for. So humility is, and Jesus is the perfect example of humility. I mean, he even described himself, I am meek and humble of heart. When we look at Jesus, we see him fully living out his identity as the second person of the Trinity, in relationship with the Father and filled with the power of the Holy Spirit, but with great boldness, with great conviction, with great fruitfulness, and great understanding of kind of his capacity here on earth, his mission here on earth. He's not hiding his mission. He's not ignoring his gifting. He's not kind of like pretending like he's not good at something. No, Jesus is very much aware of who he is and what he's made for, in the sense of what the incarnation is for, not what he's made for, but the sense of his coming to earth, his earthly mission, and that how that transcends to the existential, the universal call to both holiness and salvation that is found in him. He understands all of that, and so he's stepping into it, but he's doing it with confidence that he's able to accomplish it because of his unity with the Father and the Father's kind of lavish love on him that fuels the mission that he's doing here on earth, and then will do for the rest of time, and continues to do in our life. So Jesus is our perfect model of humility. But when we think about Spirit-filled leadership and a leader being humble, I want to give you a few instances where some signs that you may need to grow in humility, signs that we may need to grow in humility. That most of these are born out of actually my own life, of different moments where I even thought I was being humble, but in looking back at it, it was actually pride that was operating instead of humility. So here are some signs that you may need to grow in humility. The first one is you're not willing to submit to someone else's vision and mission. Basically, you're not willing to say, even though I know that I'm called to lead in the different spheres of influence that I have and the different roles that the Lord has given me, I'm not willing to submit in obedience to someone else's mission and vision, even if it's for a season of time. That there's a rebellious spirit in us that would say, no, in order for me to really exercise my leadership, in order for me to really exercise my gifting, I can't be beholden to somebody else. I can't kind of follow somebody else's direction. And there's a time and a place for striking out on our own, but there really is important seasons of our life where we submit to the anointing and the mission and vision of somebody else or some other organization or some higher authority than ourselves. And so if you're not willing to do that, or at least not willing to even entertain that as a possibility, as a way that the Lord's trying to purify your own leadership, could be because you're lacking in humility. Another thing is if you're unwilling to fail, or your reaction to failure is one of despair, it really derails you when failure happens. Listen, we all get disappointed from failure, and we'll do a whole episode on failure. But failure is a natural part of life. There are going to be times when we succeed and accomplish what we set out to do and what we feel called to do, and then there's going to be other times where it doesn't go the way we hoped. And a lot of times, and we all know this, it's an old adage, but you actually learn more through failure than you often do through victory. And I'm not talking about failure in terms of like sin. There's a certain conviction that should fall on our hearts when we disobey the Lord, and we should be convicted and we should be driven to our knees. But even sin, even the great saints tell us that even when we sin, we shouldn't necessarily be surprised by our sinfulness, but it should, in humility, cause us to run even harder towards God, to be like, I am incapable of virtue. I am incapable of holiness unless you move in my heart. That's humility. I know you're calling me to holiness, and I need you to do it for me. And I need to cooperate with the grace that you're offering me. But when we become so despairing and so overwhelmed by our weakness or our failure, that's actually pride, because what we're really expressing is, I should be able to do this. I shouldn't have failed. I should be able to press through. I should be able to just grin and bear it. Next thing is, when you abdicate or avoid responsibilities or opportunities, even those that match your skill set. So what I mean by this is, it's actually pride when you selectively utilize your gifts. It's prideful to withhold the contribution you might be able to have for the kingdom. When you decide, no, I'm going to keep this close to vest. I'm not going to do this thing, even though the Lord has commissioned me to do it, even though I'm equipped to do it, even though I have skills to do a certain thing. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to say no to that opportunity. I'm going to bury my talent out of pride. And pride is manifesting there of like some sort of ownership of this. And certainly there are times when we need to, selectively say no to things. I'm not suggesting that every time you're invited to something you should say yes, or every time you're given an opportunity to do X, Y, or Z that you absolutely have to say yes. But I'm more so thinking of like, is there a repeated instance where an opportunity or a responsibility is put before you, and you know you have the gifting to do it, and you can objectively do it very well, and maybe even better than the people around you. But out of some sort of false humility, and false humility is really just an expression of pride, you say no to it. And then finally, you may lack in humility if you never take time for silence, if you're afraid to be alone with your thoughts and with the Lord. And the reason is because we know deep down that when we're alone with the Lord and we're silent before Him, be still and know that I am God, our hearts are going to be revealed. The trueness of who we really are is going to encounter the reality of God. And that can be intimidating, and that can be even a little scary, and that can be a little uncomfortable, because very often we see how much we need to grow, especially in light of His majesty and power. And so if we're avoiding silence, if we're avoiding times that are distraction-free, or another way to put it is, if we're just constantly filling our time with distraction, we're probably lacking the humility to recognize that I need time for the Lord to reveal my heart to me. I need time to just be in His presence and allow Him to speak to me. If I'm constantly filling my mind and my heart with distraction, I'm pridefully saying, I don't need to hear your voice, Lord. And so silence is critical to hearing the voice of the Lord. And a silence that is kind of is sustaining, is lasting, a stillness of heart that really can only be developed with physical silence and kind of like physical time of stillness as well. So some signs that humility might be lacking is if you are unwilling to submit to somebody else's vision or mission, you're unwilling to fail, you're avoiding responsibilities or opportunities that match your skill set, or you're never taking time to be in silence. So then the obvious question is, what can we do about this? So here are 5 tips to help us grow in humility. 5 practical things we can do to see this virtue exercised in our lives. The first one is, there's a prayer, and we'll link it in the show notes. It's called the Litany of Humility. It's a dangerous prayer because the Lord hears it. But it goes through a series of things, series of statements where we're really saying to the Lord, just strip me of everything that isn't of you. Just strip me of all desires, all pride, all ownership, all of the things that I kind of cling to protect myself, to sustain myself, to promote myself, all these things that I've kind of allowed to leach onto my body and pour out of my heart. Lord, strip me of those things so that you are the source of my joy. You are the pearl of great price. And my identity and my virtue and my holiness and my mission flows entirely from what you are doing in my heart. So the first thing is pray the Litany of Humility. Tip number 2 is the counter to what I said, one of the challenges or manifestations of a lack of humility, which is take time every day for silence. Set an alarm on your phone, throw the alarm on the other side of the room, and sit in silence for as ever long you put in the phone there. And we'll talk more about silence and solitude in another episode, but there's a necessary component of every day a leader being still before the Lord and receiving and listening to his voice. And even if you don't hear anything, even if you don't feel anything, to have the practice and the habit of stillness, the practice and the habit of being alone with God. Third tip is a daily ritual of gratitude. Pride and gratitude are difficult companions. They don't work well together. When we have a grateful heart, it really drives out pride, because what gratitude does is it orients our vision away from ourselves and towards a source outside ourselves, something outside of ourselves that we can kind of love and be expressing gratitude towards. And so gratitude is such a critical piece of being able to say, I am receiving something from outside myself. And that is part of the posture of humility, to recognize that my life is a gift, like we've already talked about. So every day, even to take time to write down or to express out loud, Lord, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this, and this. And to be grateful even for things like your own gifts. I'm grateful that you've equipped me to preach the word. I'm grateful that you've given me a beautiful marriage that and a woman that loves me. I'm grateful for the way that that meeting went, where I was able to deliver the report in a way that everyone understood. I'm grateful that I was able to get through those spreadsheets and I was able to organize them well and people could understand them. I'm grateful for these things. Number 4, initiate and invite trustworthy people to speak into your life on a regular basis, whether that's a spiritual director or a mentor at work or a family member, somebody that you trust, that you can reach out to them and initiate a conversation that says, hey, I need you to be kind of close to me, and I need you to regularly speak into what you see going on in my life. It's just a simple way to kind of submit in a very minimal way to the vision of someone else and to the perspective of somebody else. It could be your spouse, it could be a brother, it could be a best friend. To just be able to say, I trust you, you know me, help me see what I'm not seeing. Help me kind of realize areas I need to grow. Help me realize areas that I'm succeeding in. One of the things these trustworthy people will do will not just point out the flaws, but point out the successes. Hey, I've noticed this really gives you life. Have you noticed that? No, I didn't notice that. Well, part of humility is recognizing that God actually has gifted me. And turns out when I operate in that gifting, I'm more joyful and more peaceful. So, sometimes we don't see it. We don't recognize it as such, and therefore somebody else can point it out to you. And then number 5 is to be bold and to ask for more. That part of a humble heart is actually being bold enough to utilize the gifts that the Lord is giving you, regardless of the outcome. Not that we completely ignore the outcome, but we are faithful in obedience to what the Lord's asking us to do in boldness, even if it doesn't go the way we expected, even if it objectively goes terribly, to be able to say, I am going to be obedient and bold regardless of the outcome. I will take stock of the outcome, but I'm going to do the thing the Lord's asking me to do at the front end, regardless of what it will lead to. And I'm going to simultaneously ask for more gifting to accomplish and be faithful to whatever has been asked of me. So in order to be bold, I need to be equipped. In order to be equipped, I have to ask. And through our baptism and confirmation, we have been equipped. And a lot of times it's less about the Lord giving us something outside of us that we don't currently have, and more about coming into agreement and cooperation with the gifts and the charisms we've already received that often are lying dormant in our life. Remember, whenever we want to be invited to be bold and on mission and doing something for the kingdom, we have to remember that everyone he commissions, he equips. Another way to put it is, he provides everything we need to do the thing he's asking us to do. So if the Lord is asking you to do something, he's also providing everything we need in order to accomplish it in his will. So to be bold. The prideful heart says either I have everything I need, so let's just go do this. Like, I already have everything. I'm good. I don't need any help. Let's go. Or the prideful heart says, I don't have enough. Therefore, I can't go. I don't see the gifting within me. Therefore, I can't possibly risk trying to do this thing that I feel like the Lord's calling me to do. So 5 tips again: litany of humility, daily time in silence, daily rituals of gratitude, invite somebody to speak into your life, and be bold and ask for more. This is just a quick glance at humility. Humility is just one of those foundational virtues of a leader. People love to follow humble people. People love to come into agreement and join a humble leader in their mission. So practice humility, pray for humility, and take some of these steps and see what the Lord will do in your leadership. God bless you.